Hi there. This is the first supporting video for our Moodle assignment activity, PLG. Now this little video is going to start just by showing you how to add an assignment and how to set some of the parameters that we're going to look at this afternoon. So I've created a mock kind of course here called Moodle assignment PLG, and if we click into that, it's going to go on to the course itself, and it's within the course we're going to create the first assignment. Now remember, when creating an assignment, we still need to turn the editing function on. And that will bring up the little plus symbol and the embedded link to the add an activity or resource. Once we click onto this, the very first activity that comes up in alphabetical order is an assignment. Now on the right hand side here, it just gives you a little bit more information, but we're going to go right through and just add an assignment. And the first assignment we're going to add is the most common one, and that's a file submission. So you'll see now we're on a new page called Adding a New Assignment. We need to give the assignment a name. Call this a mock PLG assignment submission. Now, whenever you see a red asterisk, it means that field has to be filled out. In this case, we'll also add a brief description saying that this is where you will upload a file as an assignment submission. Now if we want that description to display on the page, we just need to click this box here. If we scroll down, it allows us to add any additional files. Now in this case, we don't need to add any files, but you might include some of the unit instructions, perhaps a learner's guide, or any other templates that might be used as part of that assessment. Scrolling down further, the next key topic we're going to look at is availability. Now this is the first thing that was on our bullet points for today, and availability allows us to determine the date in which students can see and submit, the due date that it is due, and then a possible cutoff date even further in the future that allows students to understand that although they may have passed the due date, they can still submit the document. So we'll allow the submissions from this afternoon at 3 o'clock. And we'll create a due date of exactly 1 week at 3 o'clock. Now, if we wanted to put an additional cutoff date, we could give people a bit of a grace period and give them another week past that. Okay, so that's our availability. Now, the submission types, there are 4 possible submission types, and the 2 most common that we're going to look at today are file submissions, which is already clicked, it's the default one, and online text. Mahara Portfolio and OneNote submissions are slightly more advanced programs for students to submit a collection of work over a large period of time. Now, you can also determine how many files they're going to submit. Some assessments may require some planning documents, some drafts, final copies. Okay, so as you can see, you can submit up to 20 different files per the assessment. Now, in this case, we'll just go with the 1, and it allows us to also determine whether or not there is a limit. We generally have it defaulted to the highest limit available. Now again, these 2 just refer to OneNote, and right now we're not currently using OneNote, nor a Mahara partner. You can also actually place a word limit in the text as well, but that's only if you are using the Mahara or OneNote system. Scrolling back down, you'll see a couple of other tabs that we're going to look at today. The first one is the feedback. Now this allows us to do one of 4 things. This can allow us to then add comments that will feed back to the student when they look at their submission. We can actually upload a file that actually includes feedback to them. We can place the feedback on their OneNote session if they are submitting via OneNote, or we can use feedback via an offline grading worksheet. Comment inline allows us to actually make comments within the document that is submitted. And in this case, we'll just click that as no right now. Submission settings. Now the first 2 are really of the most important, and that is whether or not students have to click to actually submit. We always want them actually physically clicking and submitting something, because that brings us to the next part, which requires them to accept a submission statement. By changing this to yes, what will happen is when the student is ready to submit a document in an assessment, there is a disclaimer and a statement that states that they themselves have done all the work themselves, much like our current authenticity statements. Now, with units that have resubmission opportunities, they can actually already have those reset for additional attempts and the maximum number of attempts. Group settings only apply when we actually start developing groups within our subject pages. And those groups might be then individual teachers' classes that are all underneath the same subject page. Notifications allows us to notify the students about their submission. So starting with notifying graders about submissions, what that means is I'll get a message every time someone submits, and it allows me to kind of keep a running record of who has and who hasn't. There's a default setting to notify students, okay? And that also then allows us to make sure students realize when it's been submitted and looked at. Now grading allows us to follow a very kind of simple structure of a 100-point 100% scale. We can do scales. We can also use a marking guide or a rubric instead. We might have a particular grade to pass. And then we have these following three options. Blind marking basically means we won't see the student's name when we mark. So thereby any concern about any bias or relationship with the student affecting the marking is moot. The overflow allows us to go through a series of stages before being released to the students. So that way we can mark in a number of times, and then it releases to the students all at the same time. And this way, the marking allocation means that if you're doing it for an entire year level or cohort, and you want an allocation of a particular number of assessments to go to one teacher versus another, then it allows you to do that as well. Common module settings allows us to obviously show the assessment that it is. Our restrictions is where we can actually now start putting a little bit more of parameters around the assessment. Now, these are the 5 restrictions we can add. We can require a student to complete or not complete another activity before they submit it. So for instance, they may have to complete previous readings or open folders or other activities. We can prevent access until or from a specific time and date. We can add the restriction that they need to have a required grade. And we can also add a set of nested restrictions to apply complex logic. Upon completion, we can actually look at the students to receive the grade to complete the activity. So for them to complete it, they have to take a look at it. Or we could simply not state any activity completion. Most people actually show the activity is complete when the conditions are met by the student. Now, by going through all those variety of settings and restrictions, it allows us a lot of flexibility in how we want to create our assessment. So by hitting the Save and Return to Course, we now have our assessment sorted. Sorry. There it is. Now, if I'm to log out of the IT support profile, and I log back in as myself, I'll show you what it looks like for the student as we submit the assignment. As a student, I see the assignment submission tab and the description that tells me this is where I need to submit it. I can tick this box when I've completed the activity so that I have a running record for myself, what I've done. Now at this stage, you see again the parameters for when we can actually accept each of those submissions. And right now, none have been uploaded. Thank you for watching the first of 2 videos on the Assignments tab, and the second one will look at online text in a few moments' time. Thank you.